Good morning, everyone. So first of all, some logistics for the class. The first one is please read the syllabus because many people ask me and the TA questions, but they're already on the syllabus. So please read them, okay? Especially on the some of the rules for the assignments, okay? 就是请大家一定要看那个课程大纲，而且你要看那个最新的那个版本 ，okay? And basically, we have weekly questions. That is mostly on talk class, okay, the discussion session. So, and also we have weekly notes, okay? And there's a deadline for that. I extended the deadline for the QA section for this week, but there's no extension anymore for the next week. Okay, so please note the deadlines, and also there's a minimum number of requirements. Okay, so you don't have to submit every week, but there's a minimum number of the submission you have to submit. Okay, 就是不是每个礼拜都需要写，但是有最低的要求。Okay, 请大家记得写。And this is some of the suggested topics for the group presentation. So then you can pick from the list. And you do not have to, I mean, it's not limited. You can have your own topic. But please discuss with me before you decide to choose them. And especially for the first group, please come to me after this class, okay? 就是第一组，请等一下来找我一下，就是确定一下下礼拜要报告的事情。然后那个大概我列了10个吧，我们可以从里面选一个，但是不限于那10个。就是你可以这个就是有别的题目，但是要先跟我讨论就可以了。Okay? So group presentation. So starting from next week, we have 15 minutes. Okay, only 15 minutes. That's not very long. So about I think 15 minutes. You only need to do maybe 10 slides, maybe less than 10, maybe 7 to 10 slides is enough. Okay, just present one of the topics. The history of that, some of the key figures, and maybe some of the policy implications. Okay, 就是那个 group presentation， 你们就是选一个题目，然后呢介绍一下那个政策或是哪一个事情的历史，然后介绍一下有哪些重要的人物，然后呢还有一些关键的政策相关的事情。Okay， 那 if you have any questions, please ask me or 连文。Yeah. So to make sure that you are on the right track, okay? Oh, again, let me explain that I put some of the materials on the podcast, and I think I put every books, related books on just one folder on the podcast. So some of them are required, some of them are suggested, and some of them are just the weekly readings. So all the books are in the same folder, okay? But a student asked me how to choose the book that you have to do for the final book review. So it is on the syllabus, okay? There's a list on the syllabus of the suggested readings. You have to choose one of them, okay? And sometimes I will add new books on that, so you have more choices, but you only have to choose one, okay? So in the beginning of the class, this is just our second seminar, right? So second lecture, so-called lecture. So maybe the pace is a little bit slow to me, but for some of you might think that, well, for English, it's very quick. So maybe we can adjust later, but you can ask any questions, or if you want me to repeat or explain anything, please just tell me, okay? 就是对我来说，这个现在目前为止的节奏是很慢，但是有些人会觉得很快，因为你们要用英文，但我觉得都没有问题 ，OK？ 就是你们要去调整，我觉得都可以。那如果你有任何问题的话，就请随时问我 ，OK？And I will switch some of the languages here. So for the foreign students, sorry for that, please just wait for us. And if you have any questions, please just don't be shy. Okay. So for the very beginning, we have to understand some of the basic terms or some of the basic history of the US-China-Taiwan relations. Especially this week, we will start from each side. I mean, from the viewpoint of the US, China, and Taiwan. Okay, and last time we introduced a history here. So in the Second World War, World War II, okay, in the Cairo Declaration, it's determined by the leader of the U.S., British, and ROC, by Chiang Kai-shek, that Taiwan should be returned to China. I mean, not only Taiwan, but also all of the territory occupied by Japan will be returned to China. Okay. China at that time is the ROC, Republic of China at that time, represented by Chiang Kai-shek regime. Okay. However, after the beginning of the Korean War, okay, so the North Korea advanced very quickly. Okay, so there's a crisis for the U.S. and also for the Western allies. It's very dangerous that, the communist alliances could advance to other places like Japan or other countries. Okay, so they decided to build up an alliance to defend against expansion of the communist parties. 就是韩战爆发之后呢，美国开始要建构一个防线啊，去防止这个不是中国共产党的扩张。Okay, so the U.S. Adopted the Chiang Kai-shek regime again. So during the World War II, during the Civil War, the Americans just abandoned Chiang Kai-shek because of the corruption issues, right? So they have to change this. They have to come up some way to change this, because if they do not change this, then Taiwan is an internal affairs of China. So according to the international law, the U.S. cannot intervene. Okay. So in the treaty with Japan, the Americans purposely designed for the undetermined status of Taiwan. That is to make it. Japan will give up all of this sovereignty on the occupation on the territories. However, does not specify who will own this territory. Okay. 就是故意的设计台湾地位未定论，就是让日本放弃了领土主权，可是没有说要放弃给谁。Okay. So the Treaty of Peace with Japan, also known as the San Francisco Treaty, 旧金山条约. And then, Japan and Sino is China. That time China is ROC, that is Zhonghuang Minkuo. They signed a treaty. Also, it's undetermined of Taiwan's status. And then it's a Sino-American defense treaty. That is, the U.S. will guarantee the national security of ROC. But that only includes Taiwan and Penghu, not including Jinmen and Mazu. Okay, only with Taiwan and Penghu. Okay. So, and then starting the fight of the authentic China. There are two Chinas. One is China in Taiwan and China in mainland, right? And then Chiang Kai-shek just lost everything in 1971 in the United Nations. So after the U.S. switched the diplomatic ties to China and in the mainland, then there's the Taiwan Relations Act. In this act, the Americans treated Taiwan as a de facto state, but without any diplomatic recognition. Okay. 就是在这个法律里面呢，美国是把台湾视为一个国家，但是不含任何的国家的承认。So they specify that every law, every bill, every act that mentions a country or a sovereignty that apply to Taiwan. OK， 就是在这个台湾关系法里面，他们就写说，所有适用于国 国家的法律通通适用于台湾。However, that does not apply to diplomatic recognition or state recognition or government recognition. Okay, so it is, I mean, Americans just make it very clear that, okay, they want to interact with Taiwan, I mean, ROC that time, as a country. However, that does not touch upon any legal status of Taiwan. Okay? And then the US starting to adopt the so-called One China policy, that is recognition of PRC as China, and then not specify the legal status of Taiwan. That is also called the strategic ambiguity. One part of the strategic ambiguity. Okay. And the US made it very clear that they oppose any unilateral change of the status quo. Okay. 从1976年开始，美国就开始强调说，反对任何一方改变宪法 ，OK， 然后承认中华人民共和国，但是不谈任何跟台湾有关的法律地位的事情。So it's very basic. You have to know this. Okay, One China principle by the PRC, they specify that there's one China, PRC is China, and then Taiwan is part of China. We call it as three core principles of the One China principle. 一中原则三段论，只有一个中，世界上只有一个中国，中华人民共和国是中国，然后台湾是中国的一部分。Okay? It's very easy to make a comparison of KMT, Taiwan's former ruling party, also the biggest party in the legislature. Their One China principle is very similar. So they also have a One China principle that is, there's only one China, ROC is China. The only difference is here, right? And Taiwan is part of China. So under KMT, they also have the One China principle. The only difference is that they think that ROC is China. Okay. And you will argue that, okay, they not very frequently saying this, right? 就是国民党并没有很常的讲一中原则。However, it appears as the 1992 consensus. Because the 1992 consensus, according to KMT, is 一中原则各自表述. Okay? So they mention 1992 consensus all the time. However, the core principle, core elements is One China principle. Okay? 就是国民党虽然没有常常讲一中原则，但他们就讲92共识。92共识内容就是一中原则，就是一中原则。因为92共识上面就是说，就是一中原则各自表述。Okay? They argue that in 1992, the year 1992, they make some of the consensus with China, with PRC, that they can, well, express what is one China. Okay, so China and PRC has its own interpretation of one China, and we, Taiwan, and ROC has its own version, I mean, according to KMT. Okay? For DPP, there's no one China principle. There's no 1992 consensus. DPP only admits that there were indeed meetings between the two sides. I mean, yeah, it's a fact, right? I mean, the officials of Taiwan and China did meet in 1992. Okay, they meet with each other to discuss, well, we have to, I mean, do business with each other. We have to travel with each other and also postal service with each other in 1991, 1992, and the following years. 就是在1991、1992年的时候呢，两岸的确开始有谈判。为什么？因为要通商啊、通邮啊，要寄东西过去啊，然后要去探亲啊，的确是需要有交流的嘛。So in the meetings of 1992, the two sides decided to discuss about anything related to sovereignty issues later. Okay? Because we do not recognize them, and they do not recognize us. And then let's discuss this later. Okay? Not to touch upon that, because that's not, I mean, we cannot solve this in a short time, right? However, we do need to interact with each other to do business, postal, I mean, a lot of things, right? So, there's a kind of consensus. You can say it is consensus, right? Let's not talking about the sovereignty issues. So we can interact with each other socio-economically. So in the year 2000, the term 1990 consensus was invented to describe the situation that we have to interact with each other. 就是在1992年的时候，的确两岸有一个默契，就是说我们就是不要再谈，我们先不要谈主权，反正我们不可能解决嘛，对不对？所以我们就先通商、通邮、通航，好，这些先谈一谈啊，然后那些主权议题我们之后再谈吧。然后在2000年的时候，有一个人叫苏启，啊，他是之前的国安顾问，他就是马英九时期的国安顾问，他就说他发明了这个词，就是说我们1992年达成了一个共识。So let's switch the ideas there, the concept there. Do you notice that? So in 1992, the two sides decided to talk about the China sovereignty issues later. However, in Su Qi's conception, they think that the 1990 consensus is one China principle. That is, Taiwan is part of China. That is a change of the concept. Okay? 在1992年的时候，两岸明明就是只是说我们先不要谈这个议题，但是在2000年之后，国民党的一中原这个92共识却是说我们就是认同一中原则，完全的抽换概念。Okay. However, under Ma Ying-jeou administration, indeed, China is very happy to interact with Ma Ying-jeou administration. Under the precondition is that Taiwan should stress or emphasize 1992 consensus and also emphasize one China principle. Okay, it's an exchange. So China make Taiwan to repeat on the one China principle again and again on the international politics. So can you imagine that during 2008 and 2016, our president, on any kinds of international occasions, he repeatedly saying that one China principle, that is, Taiwan is part of China. Can we imagine how will this affect the perceptions for the international politics? That, well, you see, Taiwanese president saying and recognize and agree Taiwan is part of China. Okay, that is, the policies during this time. So for the U.S., it's very interesting. Starting from 1970s and the end of 1970s, when they switched the diplomatic ties with China, the U.S. recognized there's only one China and PRC is China. However, they only acknowledge China stands that Taiwan part of China. Okay, so this one the U.S. agrees, and this one the U.S. says that, oh, we know that. Okay, we know that. We do not challenge this. Okay, so you see, you can read this communique. The U.S. saying that, oh, we understand that, we acknowledge, and we do not challenge this. And the most interesting part is that, as we mentioned last week, they say that the Chinese on both sides agrees that Taiwan is part of China. Okay, the Chinese. 就是美国说，好了，我承认这些这个只有一个中国，然后呢 ，PRC 代表中国，但是我知道你的立场，我没有要挑战你。说就是我知道了，你一直在讲说台湾是中国的一部分，我知道了。然后他说，海峡两岸的所有中国人都认为世界上只有一中国，然后台湾是中国的一部分。Okay, that is 海峡两岸的所有中国人 is all Chinese on both sides. And how about Taiwanese? Okay, so it's another art of diplomacy. Okay, they purposely designed this wording. Okay, not including Taiwanese. And you can see that the U.S. policy is always emphasizing the so-called self-determination. That is 民族自决. Okay, so there's hint that okay, there's some room, a space for the Taiwanese. Let's quickly go through the dynamics of the identity here. We may have time for this 2 weeks later. This is the so-called 重要政治态度调查, the core political attitudes of Taiwanese people, done by the National Zhengzhou University Election Study Center, starting from the year 1992. So the green line is self-identification as Taiwanese, and the purple one is identified with both Taiwanese and Chinese. So the question is, 请问你自己认为自己是台湾人、中国人还是都是 ？Do you think yourself as a Taiwanese, Chinese, or both? Okay, so this is both, and the blue one is Chinese. So you can see the first crossroads here is in the year of 1994. So in the year of 1994, there was a so-called 千岛事件, the 千岛 Lake incident. And basically, it's a group of tourists, Taiwanese tourists in China, just killed and robbed. And then the Chinese officials just buried everything. I mean, literally, they buried everything. I mean, they always do this, okay? Well, no kidding. 就是中国政府遇到那种大型灾难的做法，就是把所有人都埋掉，立刻埋掉。所以你有看到很多那种火车对撞啊，或者什么天然灾害，就是他就立刻挖一个坑，把所有人都埋进去，然后就说这件事情已经结束。Okay, so that time in the 千岛 Lake incident, a group of people they're killed and then buried very soon, and then Taiwanese people just get shocked. Okay, everyone is shocked. So how can they deal with this like this? Okay, so there's a drop on the identification with the Chinese. And then here comes 1996, our first presidential election. And China just files missiles there. So again, the Taiwanese people are just shocked. Many people just escape, okay, immigrants immigrate to other countries. So it's dropped again. So are we not a family? Are we not belong to one country? I mean, you are China, we are China. I mean, Taiwanese people that time. The government, the Kennedy government tells us that we are all Chinese, right? However, how can the Chinese government file a missile to another Chinese government? So a lot of people just get, I mean, they're starting to understand that we are not belong to each other, right? So the first presidential election here, so you see an increase, a dramatic increase in Chinese identity. So during the Chen Zhenbian's era, there's up and downs here. However, in the year 2008, Ma Ying-jeou took power. Then you see a very quick increase on the Taiwanese identity. So some people just make jokes that Ma Ying-jeou is one of the Taiwan Jiaofu, something like that, because he increased so quickly here. Okay. But why is it the case that the Taiwanese identity increased here? There are several reasons here. So first of all, because of the election, so even Ma Ying-jeou and KMT, they have to stress that they are all Chinese. They are not all Taiwanese. Okay, so Ma Ying-jeou's slogan is 新台湾人. We are all new Taiwanese because we all live here. Okay, and it's no longer available for them to go back. I mean, to take back the mandate again. So they are all Taiwanese. They have to appeal to most of the Taiwanese. So they, even for their self-identification as Chinese, they just emphasize that they're all Chinese. No, they are not all Taiwanese. Okay? Because of elections. But another factor is that, so this year in 2008, so my first vote is in 2008. Okay, so in this year, I'm around 20, in my early 20s. Okay, so 投足在2008年所投足20岁. So going back to 2 decades ago, in this year, 1997 or 1996, there's an introduction of the new textbook called 认识台湾, to understand or to know Taiwan. Okay, so before these years, our history and geographic books are all about China. Okay, before these years. So there's no problem for you because you learn a lot about Taiwan. But before these years, I mean, in the schools, it only teach you about mainland China, not about Taiwan. So Li Denghui introduces a new textbook that make us to know more about Taiwan, not mainland China. And then, well, you can see some of the reforms here during the Chen Zhebian's era that it changes and it decreases the proportion of the China in China history, China, or anything about China in our textbooks. Okay, so the textbook becomes Taiwan-centric， 就是我们的教科书开始变成台湾中心，而不是中国中心。So starting from here, it takes about 2 decades to, I mean, have these seeds on the Taiwanese identity. So starting from 2008, we started to vote. Okay. So this is one of the reasons here. So here comes the Sunflower movement, and then Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is another Taipei Jiaofu because he just stimulates a lot of Taiwanese identity here. So overall, it's about 60 or 65% of people identify themselves as Taiwanese. And for the younger generations, especially people under 30, like you, and people under 20, the proportion is even higher. So it's about almost 90% people think that we are all Taiwanese. Okay. So again, here comes the communique from the US. Both sides, I mean Chinese in both sides. Well, we Taiwanese can now have our own voice, right? According to this. Okay. So there's another communique in 1982, August 17th. So it also called as August 17th communique, 817公报. In that communique, well, it's a hit to the Jiang Jingguo regime because in that communique, the U.S. agrees to decrease the arms sales to Taiwan. Well, very severe hit to Jiang Jingguo. It's a big problem, right? So, however, okay, it's lucky. However, after, in the same time, when the U.S. want to sign this communique with, declare this communique with China, also in the same time have these 6 assurance to Jiang Jingguo regime. 6 assurance. So it includes the U.S. not agree to set a date for ending arms sales to Taiwan, not agree to consult with the PRC on arms sales to Taiwan, and will not play any mediation role between Taipei and Beijing, will not force Taipei to make negotiations with Beijing, and also will not revise the Taiwan Relations Act, and also will not take any position regarding to the sovereignty over Taiwan, and will not pressure Taiwan to negotiate. 6 assurances. Okay, so when China and the U.S. declare or discuss about this communique, that is to set, to decrease the arms sales to Taiwan. President Reagan, at the same time, had these 6 assurances to Jiang Jingguo. Okay. And these 6 assurances is later in the year 2016 passed by Senate as a resolution. That is to specify them as a legal documents. 就是在817公报当中呢，就说要减少，逐步的减少对台湾的军售。那这当然是对蒋经国有很大的打击，哇，台湾这样接下来就可能快完蛋的那种感觉。但是同时的一个就是提出了6保证，6项保证，不会设定停止的日期，军购停止的日期，不会军购的时候不会先问中国，然后不会叫台湾跟中国谈判，然后也不会修改台湾关系法。Okay, it's a very important cornerstone of the US-Taiwan relations. Okay, so in the year I think it's in 2019, The former National Security Advisor John Bolton declassified this， 就是那个前国安顾问 John Bolton 就是解密了一个 memo，declassified the memo of President Reagan. So anyway, it's very big, small, so maybe large. Let's read this. In short, the U.S. willingness to reduce its arms sales to Taiwan is conditioned absolutely upon the continuous commitment of China to the peaceful solution of the Taiwan PRC differences. In addition, it is essential that the quantity and quality of the arms provided Taiwan be conditioned entirely on the threat posed by the PRC. So Reagan had a communique with China to agree that okay, so they will decrease the arms sales to Taiwan. However, in the same time, there's a secret assurance to Taiwan. Also, there's a secret memo to all of the government, and this is still effective until today. Okay. The quantity and quality of arms sales provided to Taiwan be conditioned entirely on the threat posed by the PRC. 就是美国对台湾的军购量跟值是完全的 entirely 完全取决于 PRC 所造成的威胁。That is, when there's the threat of PRC is increasing, then Taiwan can have more advanced answers. Okay. Unfortunately, it's an unfortunate thing. Okay, when we get something advanced, it means that the threat is increasing, so then we can have some advanced ones. Okay, unfortunately, but it's a reality. So, yeah. So this is this principle is still effective today. 就是现在这个原则仍然是适用。So, in general, the U.S. has a one-China policy. They do not have a one-China principle. Okay, the one-China policy, many countries has its own one-China policy. Okay, so in each country's one-China policy, they will determine how to see China's regime and how to see their stances on Taiwan. So this verb, for many countries, they use different verbiage, like take notes of, understand, or something like that. Okay, different countries. So there's a suggested reading called the many one Chinas on Trump class, where you can see that there's different kinds of permission on this one. And yes, indeed, that many countries just admit China's one China principle entirely. Okay, but there's no major countries recognize China's one China principles. Okay, this one is just copied by a lot of countries, but there's no major Western countries just recognize all of this. 就是在那篇文章叫做 The Many One Chinas， 就是很多的一种当中，就是去整理每一个国家一种政策，然后并不是每一个国家，就是有很多国家当然就是对这个是照单全收，但不是全部，而且所有的西方民主国家，主要的大国都没有做这件事情，尤其是那个台湾 is part of China 这件事情。Okay. So in general, the U.S. One China policy includes this Taiwan Relations Act, 3 communiques, and 6 assurances. You know that China always, in China's news, you will only see the 3 communiques. Okay, because Taiwan Relations Act and the 6 assurances is for Taiwan, not for China, right? So they will only mention the 3 communiques. But the U.S. will always repeat this. it's just like 就是有点像念经。You will see that the U.S. officials always say this. But according to Taiwan Relations Act, 3 communiques, 6 assurances, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's always the beginning of many news or many communiques. Okay. And others. It's very important because it's not only include these 3 elements, but this is the foundations of the U.S. Taiwan and the US-China policy. Okay. The foundation is 3. Okay. And you know it's very unique that there's a domestic law to regulate and the relationship between US and another country. Very unique one. This is the Taiwan relationship. Okay. Very unique. You will not see any laws to regulate that US-Ukraine relations. You will not see any US or other countries' relations. However, there's a Taiwan relationship. Okay. Very unique one. And all of this, under all of this, there's a so-called strategic ambiguity by the US that includes several things, but the major one, the main one is ambiguous promise on Taiwan's defense. So if you see, you can read the Taiwan Relations Act. That is, the US will provide necessary help, necessary aid, necessary action to anything that threatens the stability of the Taiwan Strait. However, they do not specify what is the necessary action. Okay, they do not specify that. Okay. That provides a lot of flexibility for the U.S. I mean, in the views of the U.S. Okay, we'll talk about this later. And it does not specify the legal status of Taiwan. Does not. It is unclear about the future plan of China-Taiwan relations. Okay, strategic ambiguity. Well, you see a lot of debates on strategic ambiguity, but in those debates on the first one, the defense, self-defense. Okay, so let's. Under President Biden, there's a significant change on the strategic ambiguity.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes,
You are.
that's the commitment we made.
President Biden's remarks on Taiwan was the 3rd time that he had made similar remarks with regard to U.S. commitment or willingness to defend Taiwan. Shortly after his remarks, the White House came out and said that U.S. policy on Taiwan remains unchanged. And a couple days after that, on May 26th, Secretary Blinken gave a public speech to share this administration's approach towards China.
So before President Biden, there's no, only once that the U.S. president says that there's a commitment for Taiwanese national defense against Chinese invasion. That is George W. Bush in, I think, 2001. And that time, very interesting that at that time, Biden was the Senate on the Foreign Policy Committee. And that time, Biden wrote an article saying that the president should not say this because there's ambiguity, strategic ambiguity. You cannot commit to a defense on Taiwan. That time, President Biden, as a Senate, blames Bush, George Bush, that he should not say that. Okay, and 20 years later, Biden already said 4 times that the U.S. has a commitment on the defense when China invades Taiwan. Okay, and every time you will see that every time when Biden makes some of the similar remarks, then the U.S. officials from the White House and from the State Department will say that, okay, we do not change anything. All of the policies are unchanged. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay, so, and every time you will hear the U.S. officials say this, according to this, and our policies are unchanged. Okay, every time. So just I say, it's just like a 念经. How to say 念经 in English? Anyone knows? How to explain 念经? I mean, 念经 is, to read something, to make your peace, peace in the mind. Okay, is that correct? So this cornerstones are just like the basic wordings there. However, the content of the wording, the context of the wording will change, and the U.S. can have flexible interpretations. 就是每一次拜登讲说会协防台湾之后，都会有很多的这个行政官员跑出来说没有，我们的这个政策是不变的。然后就像念经啊，就把这些东西全部都拿出来念一遍，然后说没有，我们没有变这样子。Okay, so literally, the U.S. still maintaining its strategic ambiguity, but the actions and wordings are indeed more clear. Okay, 就是虽然美国还是维持所谓的战略模糊，不愿意承认就是一定会协防台湾，但是实际上的做法跟讲话都是越来越清楚。但是美国人不想要完全打破战略模糊。OK， 我们等一下会再讨论。So strategic ambiguity is still there, but the wordings and actions of the U.S. is becoming more and more clear, and less ambiguous. Okay. So even after the cut of the ties diplomatically, the U.S. still maintains a close relationship with Taiwan. So on economic cooperation, so of the Asian Tigers miracle, the economic miracle of Taiwan, KMT always claim that they are doing very good on economics. However, most of the market, the resource, the capital, and our market are all on the U.S. Okay. 就是我们的那个经济奇迹，其实大部分的资金、技术跟最终我们要销售的市场，其实都是美国。Okay. And also, the U.S. keep doing, the military cooperation with Taiwan, the arms sales, and a lot of cooperation, and it maintains an ambiguous promise. Okay. So, is there any question about the history so far? Some questions for you. So what are the legal basis for the unofficial ties between U.S. and Taiwan? Unofficial is an official policy of the U.S. toward Taiwan. So they are deliberately make everything unofficial. Okay. So for example, the embassy of the U.S. in Taiwan is called AIT, right? AIT, the American Institute in Taiwan. And the headquarters of AIT is in Washington, D.C., but there are two different embassies, de facto embassies, or representative offices, one in Taiwan, one in Taipei, and one in Kaohsiung. So AIT is de facto embassy of the U.S., but according to the law, it's just only a civil group, an NGO, okay. 就是像 AIT 明明就是美国的大使馆，但是它必须在法律上登记成一个民间组织，假装自己是民间组织 ，OK？ Because the U.S. wants to keep everything unofficial, but it is, actually it's official. Every personnel from AIT, are just employees of the State Department. State Department is the American's foreign ministry. 就是 State Department 就是国务院，就是美国外交部的意思。OK， 那 AIT 里面的人全部都是国务院来，所以 it's the same. However, on the law, legally speaking, AIT is not an official bureau. It's a NGO. It's a non-governmental organization. Okay, so it's very strange that an NGO can issue you a visa, right? 就是一个民间组织怎么可以发签证呢？ 发签证是国家主权的行为。And you should also know what is the status quo for the three actors. We will discuss about this in the coming weeks. The status quo, according to China, is that they still own they own Taiwan, right? According to the One China principle, Taiwan is part of China. Well, PRC owns all China. And for Taiwan, the status quo is, well, this is a topic for 2 weeks later. And for the US, what is status quo? Status quo is that, well, they do not specify what is status quo. They specify, we do not want any unilateral change on status quo. That is how the US defines status quo. 就是美国并没有直接讲说什么叫做现状，他们只有说我们反对任何单方面改变现状，这是美国说的 status quo。Okay. Will U.S. abandon Taiwan? Well, listen. That's for the next hour. Let's take a break. 那不然你现在就决定一个啦。2758讲历史，只要讲题目那个历史，怎样我这边没有。那个新的是个我知道。推荐大的。新的吗？没有这个新的，3月9号那个才是什么？对对对，你看你左边的是你打开来看，然后呢后面有一个那个在后面对啊，好不好？然后那个前因后果，然后看这个连接到现在，因为现在中国还在回归，但是现在就是都干货，所以我跟你讲，其实这个然后现在我们回去确认一下，强烈建议你到时候现在要赶快，有可能要花2天的时间收集资料，然后那些，然后把资料需要一些时间。第二点，你真的强烈建议最起码就是那个不然就是台湾管理法，台湾管理法现在管理，台湾管理法那时候组织制定的，就是国会议员就它内容大概有5期，然后就是它到底最终但是研究有趣，而且吧，先着急。
对那个人的，白痴哦，那么潇潇是那个刚才那个人，他说还有那个另外一个的联络对，课文，不是啦，我是说我主约他，主约吗？在这里，就是多2个3年级的跟正3 A 正3 B， 对，跟一个正1 B 的。我怎么会念？黄玉川。对，然后1年级的不知道在哪里。我去上课去找好了。因为蓝天月说有寄信给他，可是我不知道他有。
现在是那个填的比较主流，因为我们的系统上中文跟英文就是转换有问题，所以我们现在请大家在这边比较。
你也用这个？那
我以为
他有创个讨论。
是你帮忙一下。你必须扶手下 ，raise
这一。
然后
放我听。
那第3组的，有没有第3组的同学？第3组是一轴加与麦城并。第三个。哦。Please change your context and then group A。第8组的同学，第8组 Thank you。
可以帮我吗？
第1组的同学，第1组，陈新宇、贺成威。 张嘉诚、蓝天月、苏玉如、黄玉成、杨宗业。Please come here。第一组下礼拜就要报告，请赶快。哎，没有其他人吗？这样子我只有4个、哦，那你们就
我们的第4
可是签语
有一个没来，然后一个刚刚好。
可以的，是那赶快好。When we go to visit the Straits Exchange Foundation, please, each group, there's a tour. I think there's the tour will be demanded. So each group, please assign specific person to explain what happened to your group member. Okay. And in the Q&A section, you can ask English, in the tour, during the tour, I think the introduction will be demanded. 有没有人身上有充电线？充电借我讲解。对，是 USB-C 或者是。哦，没有，是要那个 for Android。有没有？哦，谢谢，那也可以，就是那个线就好。等下这里我拿去。Well, about half of people take the base. Take the base in the first one. But it's not including the one China principle of the US. There's no one China principle for the US. Okay? There's only one China policy. So I purposely doing this, for one China policy principle. So please make it clearly that the one China principle is from China. The one China policy is from US and many other countries. Okay? So if I change the topic into the question into what is not including the one China policy of the US, then you can select the first one that recognize Taiwan is part of China. Recognize is 承认, but acknowledge is not 承认. Acknowledge is just understand. Okay. Why the US deliberately designed the undetermined legal status of Taiwan? That is because after the Korean War, they have to make some states to give a role in Taiwan Strait. Okay. So let's now turn to the national interest of the U.S. Okay. First of all, for a great power, there are two kinds of powers. 就是有两种强权。The first is having a sea power versus a land power. That is, if a country is a superpower, that most of their power is a projection of their military and economic and other forces to other places. That is more like a sea power. 就是海权国家跟陆权国家是不一样的。And for the land power, that is that they can occupy as many places as possible. So, for the sea power, the most important thing is that to keep the sea or keep the navigation open and free. Okay. It is impossible that you occupy all the ocean, right? You cannot occupy all the ocean. And on the ocean, it's very difficult to make the boundaries on the ocean. Very difficult. There's no size on the boundary or any, not like the land, right? On the land, you know the boundary of a lot of things, like you know physically our classroom. You go out of the door, then it's out of this boundary. So for land power, they have to, or they want to occupy as many places as possible. Occupation is their core national interest. For sea power, it's not like that. Okay? Sea power, they want to make everything free and open. The core interest of the sea power. So you can see that the rising competition between the US and China is basically not only about US and China, but also a paradigm of the land power and the sea power. Okay. And you will see this as in the US national policy that they emphasize that they demand no excessive maritime demands. That is, you can use the sea, but no excessive demands. Okay, that is the formal wording in the U.S. National policy papers and a lot of things. 对美国来说，它是一个海权国家，海权国家最重要的事情是要保持航道的畅通。那陆权国家强调的是占领，你就是要拥有那个土地，我要拥有那个土地，但是海权国家并不是。海权国家看的是你能够把你的兵力投射到多远的地方，保持航道畅通到什么程度。OK， 那美国的国家政策有一个非常重要的是说，它不允许，他认为每一个国家都不能够拥有过多的或者太超过的海 海上的主张。So the word, I mean, the important thing is that no excessive maritime demand. Everyone can use the sea, but you cannot be too much. What is too much? Well, like for example, China is now militarizing some of the small islands in the South China Sea. That is too much. You cannot militarize the islands and block our navigation. Okay, that is too much. That's just an example. So you must know this. There's two different paradigms. Okay. And for Taiwan, do you think Taiwan is a sea country or maritime country or a land country? Land or sea? What is Taiwan's future? Most of Taiwan's economic GDP depends on what? Trade. So Taiwan is definitely should be a sea, a maritime country, right? Because our future, the main economic activities are all depending on the sea, not on the land. However, if your self-identification is for the Great China, then we will seek to go through the land, not through the sea. It's a totally different mindset. Okay? The US-China relations, there's different periods of times. After World War II, especially after the Korean War, there's a containment policy. Containment, especially for the Soviet Union, but including, at that time, the Soviet Union and China are two good friends. And then China and the Soviet Union become enemies. And enemies are friends. So the US is starting to make friends with China to compete with the US, to the Soviet Union. 就是在第一个阶段是要围堵，那这个时候呢，中共跟苏俄的关系很好。但在第二个阶段，其实中共跟苏俄已经开始变得敌人。那敌人的敌人就是朋友，所以你就是跟苏俄的敌人，也就是中国做朋友，来去跟苏俄做竞争。Okay, and starting from what we call the engagement policy of the U.S. Then starting from, I put some question marks here because there's no specific timing. But starting from early 2010, the U.S. starting to think, well, China may be a threat to us. And then it takes a decade to change their perceptions. And especially when Donald Trump took power, he quickly changed the perceptions toward China. Okay, so I put some question marks. Everything starts from him, Henry Kissinger. He's a 100% realist, meaning that there's no idea, there's no emotion, there's no friends. Everything can be considered by the power competition between the great powers. So there's no important roles. For him, the smaller countries, well, he doesn't care about smaller countries. Right? So he made an alliance with China in order to compete with the Soviet Union. So he arranged President Nixon to visit China. In the beginning, the Americans want to engage with China because the major reason is to compete with the Soviet Union. The major reason, the most important one. And there's a theory, for the social science theories, a lot of scholars starting to see that we should engage more. Because if we engage with China, then they will eventually democratize and liberalize someday. 就是很多的社会科学的理论开始去跟大家讲说，只要我们跟中国多交往，然后呢，就是最终他们就会自由化跟民主化。Why is it the case? Because, well, if you engage with another dictatorship, then that dictatorship must make more trade with you and make more openness and brings more new ideas. For example, the Hollywood movies and more exchanges on scholar, a lot of different things. And then people of this dictatorship will understand, well, we should pursue for liberalization, democratization, ideally. 就是那个大家觉得说，美国人觉得说，只要我们跟中国交往，反正他们就会变得更开放，更开放就会接触到我们美国的这个很多的文化，然后呢还有很多的交易啊等等，就会变得越资本主义化，然后资本主义到最后就会走向自由化跟民主化。Okay, that is called, I mean that paradigm is called the modernization theory. Modernize. Okay, modern is a new, right? Modernization theory is that trade will encourage more openness, and then people will demand for more political rights, and then force the dictators to open up for the elections and so on. That is in theory. But it is so cool. So, but that failed. I mean, right now we know that failed, right? You know. But at that time, this is the main thinking or main theory to support the engagement policy with China. Okay. Note that at that time, make money with China is not one of the reasons. I mean, in the 1970s, because China at that time is before Deng Xiaoping, China is in very bad shape. It's not yet become the main market or economic power that time. Now this one is not the main reason yet, but later it becomes the main reason. Okay? So after the 1990s, or especially after the year 2000, when China really becomes the world factory and the world market, then, well, everyone thinks that it's very good to make money with China. Okay? 就是在一开始的时候，跟中国赚大钱并不是最主要的考量，因为那时候中国的经济还很糟。但要在邓小平改革开放之后，才慢慢有起色。然后在1990年，尤其是2000年，中国加入世贸之后呢，跟中国一起可以赚大钱，才变成美国人主要的考量。So in the 1980s, well, China and the U.S. established the diplomatic ties in what year? 1979. Okay, 1979. So in 1980s, the GOP stands for the Republicans. That is a grand old party. Okay, 大佬党，就是traditionally their nickname GOP. So you will see GOP nowadays still mentioned is directly linked to Republicans. 共和党。The GOP emphasizes anti-communist policies, but that communist is specifically points to the Soviet Union. They are not really anti-China at that time. So the GOP is more pro-China in the 1980s because they want to compete with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is their main target. They want to cooperate with China at that time. So GOP is more China friendly in the 1980s. For the Democrats, they are anti-China at that time. But more specifically, they are not anti-China, they are anti-openness. Because the labor unions are the main constituents of the Democrats. 民主党在1980年代比较反中。但它不是反中，它是反开放、反自由贸易，因为他们的主要的 constituents is the supporters，OK， constituents。民主党的主要的支持者是来自劳工阶层，那劳工阶层都反开放，因为开放之后就会有人抢走他们工作。Because laborers always hurt for the trade openness. So they basically will oppose the openness in the beginning. Okay. Also, there are more idealists in the Democrats. Idealist means that someone who emphasizes human rights and a lot of democratic values when they promote foreign policies. So Democrats emphasize more on the human rights issues. They do not want to too quickly engage with the dictator or dictators. Okay, so that is the 1980s. And also, then comes the Tiananmen Square incidents, the massacre. After that, the U.S. just quickly cut off all of the ties with China because it's too scary. I mean, everyone, Western countries are just shocked. Because during the past decades, starting from 1979, when Deng Xiaoping took power, I mean, he does not take power, he should be in real control. So he started to initiate other reforms, and the Western countries believe that Deng Xiaoping can bring some orders and eventually lead to liberalization for China. But here comes a big massacre. 就是在1979年，邓小平开始掌权，开始推动改革开放之后，西方国家认为中国很有可能就会走向自由化，但是却在这个1989年发生大屠杀，然后西方国家非常震惊，然后就是切断了很多的跟中国的联系。So you can imagine that Democrats want to emphasize that, well, there's a human rights crisis, we cannot engage in China too much, right? But there's a U-turn. U-turn is Taiwan, okay? U-turn of Democrats in the 1990s, especially under President Clinton. So President Clinton, during his campaign against which one? Against George Bush, the father, I mean, Bush, okay? Oh, by the way, George Bush only served for one term, and he's the only one. I mean, after the Second World War II, there's only one time that a party wins the third term. 在24次世界大战到现在，美国这么久以来只有一个政党可以连续当第3届。That is George Bush. Okay. So let's switch. I mean, at most, a party will win 2 terms and then switch to another party. So it's very common that has a party turnover. So Taiwan right now may also only have the first time that a party wins the 3rd term. Okay. So George Bush. So George Bush lost to Clinton, right? And Clinton, at that time, Mr. Clinton said that we should not give the preferential tariff status to China because we want to examine their human rights condition. Then we determine whether we should give them the preferential tariff status. And that is Mr. Clinton before becoming the president. 就在竞选的时候呢，克林顿就说我们一定要就是严格的检视中国的人权实行的状况，不然我们不能给他那个最惠国的那个关税的待遇。Okay. However, after he took power in 1993, there's a U-turn. I mean, he gives everything to China, everything, without condition, unconditional preferential tariff status to China. It's a U-turn, 八加湾, okay, decoupling from human rights. Why is it the case? Why there's and so Mr. Clinton from anti-China, some kind of anti-China, to highly pro-China that time. And that consolidates the so-called engagement policies in the 1990s. Okay, 就是说他就是把台湾嘛，之后就是等于是巩固了这个所谓的交往政策。And this engagement policy lasted for 3 decades until officially end in May 2021。就是这个交往政策从此就是确立了大概30年之久，到2021年才正式被结束。So, who leads the rise in China? After Tiananmen Square, every Western countries cut off the ties with China, right? Cut the ties. And actually, that time, China's economy is not very good. I mean, and they have an economic crisis. Because you can imagine that there's a domestic violence and the crackdowns everywhere. So it's not possible for them to have a good economy. So there's an economic crisis at the early 1990s. So who lead the rise of China? 谁让中国重新站起来？ the tiger leading the dragon, how Taiwan compel China's economic mass. Sharing the same as Taiwan. Okay? Because a lot of Chinese people, Taiwanese businessmen, went to China in the early 1990s to establish business there and to, well, because Taiwanese economics are very good in the 1980s, right? So they just copied the experience to China. There's a whole new market there with a lot of numerous laborers, cheap laborers, okay? And with China was very eager to connect to the world economy at that time. So they need help. They need help, okay? And it is mainly by the Taiwanese business. Well, back to that time, if you ask this businessman, do you consider yourself as a Chinese or Taiwanese? Maybe most of them will say they are Chinese, but well, it's identity problem there. Another scholar, Kong Gaofeng, I don't know how to pronounce in Hong Kongese. I mean, Hong. So Kong Gaofeng, he teaches in the Johns Hopkins University in sociology. This book, very easy to read. So I just added this book to the suggested reading. You can also choose this for the finals review. Okay, there's a Chinese version for this book. So yeah, it's small. So he argues that not only Taiwanese businessmen, but also Hong Kong's business. Well, Hong Kong is another tiger, right? So this still applies. 就是孔暴风教授说，不只是台湾的商人啊，还有香港人，就是大量的去中国投资，教中国人怎么投资，尤其是他们教中国人如何跟美国做生意，跟美国游说 ，OK， 然后改变了美国的政策。So Professor Hong says that the father of new China is Mr. Clinton, because Mr. Clinton established a lot of lobbies from Hong Kong's business, so that there's a switch of the U.S. foreign policy. OK， 就是孔暴风就说那个新中国的国父是克林顿，因为克林顿转变了那个美国外交关系，然后让中国得以发展起来。那个时候的背后就是香港商人去游说美国人。OK。So in the early 2000s, then China joined WTO. So that time, again, most of Democrats is against the deal. So the majority of people support are from the GOP. 就是在那个时候，在辩论到底要让中国加入的时候。民主党还是比较反对，然后共和党比较支持。Okay. And here comes the war on terrorism. 9/11事件。So the war on terrorism entirely changed the focus of the U.S. in China, and also changed all the world. Okay, so starting from that, the U.S. shifted their strategic focus to Middle East. So there's no time, no space for them to deal with the rising China. And they need to cooperate with the rising China to combat with terrorism. Okay? 就是9/11事件发生之后，改变了全世界，包括尤其是美国的外交政策。那这个美国外交政策，他们就是开始需要跟中国去做合作，然后才能够打击恐怖主义。Okay? And plus, because China joined WTO and then everything is open.Then a lot of businessmen just want to do business with China instead of any tension between them. So the U.S. and China begin to develop a nearly alliance status. Okay, 就是他们几乎成为同盟了，几乎成为同盟关系了。Very very close US-China relations at that time. Very close. And that time in Taiwan is a Chen Shui-bian's administration.And Chen Shui-bian administration is facing a minority in the legislature. I mean, so, and also Chen Shui-bian, he does anything, everything he did are opposed by China. So China is very mean to the Chen Shui-bian administration. So that, and also, but President cannot acquire the majority in the legislature, so sometimes he has to show some more extreme policies. And the US was very angry about this. 就是陈水扁面临多重的危机，第一他没有多数，然后那时候民进党是非常弱，然后第二就是他不管做什么事情，中国都非常对他非常糟，然后就是都不理他对 ，OK， 然后所以他就必须要做一些比较极端一点的事情，他其实就是回应的那所谓的深绿选民，所以美国就觉得很不开心。So what's the difference between Taiwan and China? So when Taiwan took power in 2016, it's the first time that EPP holds the majority in the legislature. So she can resist a lot of pressure from different group of people. She can promote a consistent foreign policy. Okay? And secondly, at that time, in 2016, Americans are starting to notice the rise in China, the dangers of the rise in China. But in the Chen Shui-bian's era, the American and China are very, very good, very close friends. So you cannot change anything about the US-China relations. So the structure is totally different. And then comes the U.S. financial crisis. That is, the U.S. economy is falling, and then the U.S. is asking help from China. Because China at that time is in a very good shape, and they have a lot of money, and then the U.S. is asking China to buy the national bond of the U.S. to rescue the American stock market. 就是美国就是要求，就是请求中国去救他们的股市啊。大家可以想象吗？美国请求中国去救股市，那怎么救？就是买美国的国债。And then we have the Olympic Games in Beijing. So that time, China is becoming highly confident on their own. The Chinese leaders or Chinese people, the Chinese nationalism, it's increased rapidly. They started to think that, oh, the West, the US is falling, and China is rising, and we should pursue for a great Chinese century. Okay, so we see invasive diplomacy is failing. So for example, the first one, the major reason, compete with Soviet Union, that no longer exists, right? The reason is no longer exists. And then China becomes the main threat. The perception. And the main threat is moving from Soviet Union then to the terrorists, and then to slowly to China. And the hope for liberalization and the democratization failed, especially after Xi Jinping took power in 2012. Okay? And in the beginning, you can make a lot of money in China. Everyone has to invest in China. However, they started to find that the cost of doing business in China is just increasing. So China will steal everything, every technology, and every product, and make unfair competition with American companies. 就是那个 invasion policy 背后的那些原因都已经不存在了，包括已经不需要再跟苏联竞争。那现在中国变成最主要的威胁。然后呢，这个原本希望中国会自由化嘛，可是也失败，因为习近平上台之后就越来越独裁，根本就没有自由化，反而越来越独裁。然后呢，你要跟中国赚很多钱，越来越赚不到钱，为什么？因为中国会把所有事情都偷走，所有东西都偷走。然后这个你跟他打官司一定输。因为中国的法院必须信党 ，OK， 法院上面就要写说跟着党走，那你不可能在那个法律战上面写你中国这样子 ，OK。So we will have 1 week for the tech war and trade war. So the U.S. companies started to find out that it's too costly to do business in China because, well, the Chinese government can shut you down without any notification. And also, they will steal your property, intellectual property. And also, there's a lot of spy cases. So it's costly to make friends or make economic connections to them. They started to think that, well, they should adjust different China policies. So here come two books. I like these two books. The first one is full of stories, very easy to read. So if you want to practice your reading, English reading, I highly recommend this one. I really like this one. So they starting from, the journalist, Hui Mingli, and Bob Davis, they starting from their own family stories. So, so you see that part of the story is about globalization. So under globalization, a lot of business just shift to where there's a cheap labors. 就是美国跟中国之间的故事有一部分是来自于全球化，就是说，当一个市场开放之后呢，你国内的这些产业就外移了，外移到那些比较有那个非常便宜劳工的地方。But part of stories is not only about the economic stuff, but also about many high technology competition and then military ambitions. So it's about superpower showdown. And this businessman is very important because they play important roles in lobbying to change policies. Before mid 2010s, so there are a lot of American companies lobby for China. So lobby that company, lobby the government not to have strict policies toward China because they want to do business with it. But after mid 2015s, less and less companies are willing to lobby for China. 就在2015年前后之前，很多的公司会一直不断帮中国去做lobby，就是游说，就是说你不要对中国不好，你不要太提防中国，你不要太跟中国竞争，因为我们想要跟他做生意，那你不要惹中国不开心。但是在2015年之后，很多公司已经不愿意再帮中国做游说，因为中国就一直不断偷他们的技术，然后就对他们。对 business 很不好，所以很多 business 就是很多的商业公司，其实现在就是觉得中国市场其实充满了很多的挑战，大的机会。Okay, so driving the change of the US-China relations, one of the main factors is the driving the change of the business relationship, because China just have the unfair competition of the financial and economic markets. So less and less companies, less and less businesses want to lobby for China. That is one. And second, that they mentioned is the leadership. So under Xi Jinping and under Trump, Mr. Trump just unpredictable on everything. So he just rapidly changed a lot of different perceptions. But for Xi Jinping, he concentrates the power and change the chain on the development of the China's region. Okay. So in general, the structure becoming the duel between democracy versus autocracy. 就是它整理了三个最主要的那个中美关系大转变的因素，一个是商业上，就我刚才说，第二个是领导人本身的因素，那第三个是整个结构上的因素，变成民主国家跟独裁国家的对抗。This book is originally an English version, but then translated into Mandarin, led by Zhu Jingyi and others. They argue that the U.S. and the China competition is actually the competition of values. Okay, values. You see that this is in 2017 and 2007. Okay, when Hu Jintao took power and when Xi Jinping took power, what's the difference here? What's the difference between these two papers? You see the size of the leader is just completely different, right? What does that mean? So before Xi Jinping, there's a so-called institutionalization or so-called collective leadership in China. That is established by Deng Xiaoping. So Deng Xiaoping found it very dangerous to concentrate power to one man. So he decided that there's a collective leadership. Deng Xiaoping, because Deng Xiaoping is very powerful and with authority, legitimacy from originally from the revolution era. So he has the power to do this. And he established this collective one. So you see that the chairman or the general secretary, secretary general, the secretary general of the CCP, 就是共产党总书记, is among equal ones for the collective team. This is called political bureau, 就是政治局常委. It's a call, about 7 to 9 people. It's a call, the very top leaders of the CCP. Their status is basically inherently equivalent to each other, right? But in this way, you cannot even see the faces of others, right? 所以你在习近平的时代，甚至连他们的脸长怎么样都不知道。这些人是谁其实不重要了，其实所有的权力都集中在习近平的身上。He concentrates the power. He reversed the institutionalization of CCP, reversed or he destroyed the collective leadership of CCP. 就是他变成了一个真正的独裁者，对不对 ？Okay. So you see this every time there's a switch of the leadership, you see that the new leaders they are equal. I mean they are equal. Right? The new Hu Jintao, this Hu Jintao comes to Hu Jintao, and Hu Jintao to Xi Jinping. Equally, they are equally, and size is equal. But from 2017, they are not equal anymore. Okay, so only Xi Jinping. So the New York Times, there's a interactive column. It's very good to read. So you can just click and see how Xi Jinping concentrates the power. Okay, a very interesting topic here. So the U.S. starting to notice that, okay, China becoming a threat to the ocean, the international ocean. So in the Trump administration, they had this so-called Indo-Pacific strategy. Okay. The idea or the concept was initiated by the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Okay, Abe Jin-san. He started to call the attention to the rising China back in 2007, 2008. Very early stage. That time, all over the world they want to make a business with China. But Shinzo Abe has the vision that China is rising. It's very dangerous for a dictator. So he calls attention and more make alliance to at least they want to prevent China's fast growing. Okay? And Shinzo Abe just persuaded Mr. Trump to adopt this Indo-Pacific strategy. So the idea is from Shinzo Abe. And after Biden took power, Japan again, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but Anten Wenshou Prime Minister, the Japanese Prime Minister. So I don't know in English, but Anten Wenshou persuaded Biden to adopt, to continue the Indo-Pacific strategy again. So Japan is pushing for the Indo-Pacific strategy. Why is this the case? Why Japan wants to do this? It's very easy to understand because Japan is located very near China, right? They have to build up these alliances as a protection for China's expansion. Okay, 就是印太战略。最早是由安倍晋三提出，大概在2006、07年左右他提出来，然后就觉得中国的崛起会很危险，那他就是需要用那个同盟的关系去阻止中国扩张的太快速，然后他说服了川普，然后后来岸田手下也说服了拜登继续采用，当然就是美国本来就想要采用嘛，但是那个 specific term Indo-Pacific strategy 要继续延续下去，背后是日本一直在推的很努力。OK， 那也是因为印太战略的关系，所以日本真正成为政治上的大国。因为在2次世界大战结束之后，日本是战败国，大家都不想要让它政治有实力，所以日本经济很强，政治却不强。 一直安倍晋三才让日本真正的变成一个国际上政治强权。But because of Shinzo Abe, Japan really become a great power in international politics. Because after the World War II, Japan is a defeated one, surrenders, and then Japan is, only can develop the economic power, but not the political or military power. But because of Shinzo Abe and because of the Indo-Pacific strategy, then Japan now is a political power, great power in the international politics. Okay, so you can just read hard insight. Okay, maybe we can read this next time. Indo-Pacific strategy. So the current views of the U.S. on China is that, the current views on China and also specifically on the cross-strait relations is, first, the famous Davison's window of 2027. That is, this is the former commander of the Indo-Pacific of the U.S. He said that in a hearing in the Congress, he said that in year 2027 is most likely that China will invade militarily to Taiwan. 2027. Secretary of State Lincoln said that what change is this? What change in the cross-strait relations is this? The decision by the government in Beijing that status quo was no longer acceptable, that they wanted to speed up the process by which they would pursue reunification. So the current views of the U.S. is that they perceive China is now pushing for unification, and China is now changing the status quo. Remember that there's a core national interest of the U.S. is they oppose any unilaterally change of the status quo, and they perceive that it is China that is now changing the status quo. The current views. Okay. And why is it 2027? Why is this year so special? Because Xi Jinping will pursue for his fourth term in this year. So, and also, in this year is a year that estimation that the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, will become ready. On the quantity and quality, they think. The U.S. thinks that is the closest one to PLA to the U.S. Also, this year, or before 2030, is a year that America is changing their equipment to another generation. They want to change this generation to upgrade to another generations. So the PLA might think that we should do this before the U.S. complete the upgrade. 就是在2027年呢，习近平要追求第4任，所以他必须要做一番大事。然后呢，这一年也是美军在换装，所以 PLA 会觉得说要在换装前干一票大事，不然的话等他换装完就再也追不上。Okay. So the estimation is here. Okay. Any question about all of this so far? I think time is only up today, so we are going to stop here. This each group please select one leader and to communicate or to organize the discussion and pick up the questions your topic as soon as possible. Okay. So after the first group pick a topic, then group 2 to group 3 to group 4 please select yours. 就是不要重复，然后你们就不要写方向。OK， 看你要猜拳还是怎么选都可以。OK， 好。So let's call it a day.
要保钱，要保钱。